I have been getting a lot of requests on how to apply your DIY fabric labels that you make to your sewing projects. Adding a custom label or tag to your projects. If you're giving these items as a gift, it makes the gift a little bit more unique and personable. And if you're selling products, you can put your logo on there and your label on there. I'm Jan Howell. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you 5 simple methods of applying these cute little tags that you make to your sewing projects. So without any further ado, let's get started. If you're interested in making your own labels, I have a tutorial showing you how easy they are to make. The first method that I'm going to show you is an outward tag that's included in the seam and looks like this. So as you can see, I've included it in these burp cloths that I've made, a slipper tag in the back, and this is a mitered corner receiving blanket. And I have just included it right here in the seam. I'll demonstrate how to do this on this burp cloth that I'm making. And all these projects I have tutorials for and patterns for that you can check out on my website, youmakeitsimple.com. So I have my project, and to include it in the seam, take your tag, and this is for a foldable tag. Of course, you could just have it, I guess, single layered if you wanted it to, but I'm going to take this particular tag and fold it in half. And so the raw edges and the cut edges are here, and here is the folded edge. You'll be sewing it between 2 layers of fabric, and you'll need to account for the seam allowance. Because if I wanted to sew this in and not have it sew the stitching go into my tag, see, I want to have on this, I have a white border around the whole thing, so I want that to be even. So I'll find my seam allowance, which is 3/8 on this particular project, and then I'll know where to place the tag, so it's, when I stitch, it's going to leave that little bit of a white outline around the tag. And as you can see, the raw edges are pointing outward, and the folded edge will be on the inside. And I want to make sure that it's not going to get caught in the seam allowance on the bottom as well. So to keep this in place, you could just clip it in place and then sew your seam, but I find when you start moving your project around and sewing it, this can get crooked. So what I'm going to do is just clip it in place onto the bottom layer first, and then I'm going to take it to the sewing machine and just baste it in place really close to the edge of the fabric. So I'm not going to use the full 3/8 inch seam allowance. I'm just going to maybe do a 1/4 inch or even 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Just so it keeps that in place. Now that that's held in place, I'm going to take my other piece of fabric that I'm sewing together, right sides facing together, line up my edges. Instead of using a straight pin, I'm going to use these fabric clips. Then I'm not poking a hole into my tag. Sometimes when you use a pin, it will leave a mark, a pin mark in your tag. Just depends on what kind of transfer paper you're using. There's my tag sticking out, and I'll continue with that seam. I'm going to clip off that excess tag, even with the fabric. I have turned my burp cloth inside out. I'll pull that out, pull out my seams. About pressing and ironing your tags, you want to avoid the iron on the tag, or else it will melt the tag. Then I'll proceed with the rest of my project, top stitching, and then it will look like this. Pretty simple. So another way, like I say, I have included it just in any seam that you make. To explain that one more time, how this works is just fold your tag in half. The raw edges go towards the outside of the seam, and you can include that just about in any seam. The next method is the wraparound label, which I'm going to demonstrate on this cute upcycled sweater little bear hat that I've made. So you'll see this on beanies a lot, where they'll wrap around their label or their tag. And so I have taken this particular label. These labels print out. Let me just show you how they print out. So this is what the sheet of labels look like. If you wanted to do a side fold, I would cut out 2 here and then have the fold and wrap around whatever your project is this way. So I have cut it out so that it will wrap around the bottom of this hat. So just another little tip about these tags. If you do have a fabric and your final label, it starts to fray a little bit. This one's got a really nice plastic coating, so it didn't fray too much, but you can always take this fray check, this liquid fray check, and just apply a little tiny bead of this fray check around the edge, and you're good to go. You can even wash these out and it won't start fraying. So I'm going to decide where I want the tag to be. I've made a crease. So take the label and bring the crease at the bottom edge of your project. We're going to sew the back one first. So I'm going to clip that in place and flip it over. And I'm going to sew just a straight stitch right along the edge of that black square. I'm going to back stitch at the beginning and at the end. Flip the tag to the front and it will overlap that stitching you just did. Then I'll just sew the top edge on the white portion. This next method I'm going to show you is just a top stitch with a zigzag stitch. This particular t-shirt, I sewed this on a long time ago, many years ago, and look how it still washes up really nice. There's no frayed edges, and the tag still looks really nice and crisp and clean. And as you can see, I've used this just a brownish black color thread and zigzagged all the way around. And I'll demonstrate how to do that with this particular tag. So if you don't want the stitching to show, you'll want to use white thread here and a very narrow stitch. I'll show you on the sewing machine how to adjust, just so you're getting that zigzag so the white thread is not going into the black part of the tag. So I have set my machine to a zigzag stitch. I've done a practice area so I know how wide that stitch is, and it was just a little bit too wide, so I narrowed it a bit. That way when I'm doing my project I don't have to unpick, then I know exactly how wide it's going to be. So I'm not even going to pin this in place, I'm just going to hold it. And you can turn your hand wheel toward you to see where the needle is going to come down on that left side of the zigzag. And that's good. Move your needle down, lift up your presser foot and pivot. You can see how nice that finished that edge off, that contrast, and you really don't see that zigzag stitch. So another fun way to apply a tag. I'm going to show you on this mitered corner baby blanket. I'm going to apply this tag that I have made with just a piece of ribbon, and it's just another example of a top stitching method. When you're using ribbon, the side edges obviously are not going to fray, but the cut ends may fray. So you can fold those under like so and then apply it, or you can use your fray check. I like to have a nice folded edge, and I'm going to apply it just right there in the corner of the blanket. And I'll just top stitch just very close to the edge all the way around. So that's what it looks like in this corner. This mitered corner baby blanket is a really fun project, and I'll put the link to that tutorial in the description below. I'm going to demonstrate the top stitching on this tablet bag that I've made from an upcycle sweater. I'm placing it on the inside of the project. If this tag color was a different color than the back of the project that I was using, I would use a different color so that on the underside you'll want to use a thread that matches that, unless you want the stitching to show. But I don't want the stitching to show. I'm going to put in my machine a bobbin with brown thread and the top stitching thread. Since this is a brown label, I'm going to use brown on the top as well. But if this was a white label, I'd want to use white on the top thread and brown in the bobbin. So just a basic stitch around the edge of that square label, and can't see that thread on the other side. The last method I'm going to show you is applying tags that you have made out of ribbon, or this is a piece of cotton seam tape that I like to make tags out of. The edges are finished, but the ends that you cut are not going to be finished. So like the other tag that I showed you, I'm going to fold the ends under. And you've all seen these kind of tags where you'll just be sewing the ends here. I'm going to demonstrate on this piece of cotton fabric that I have made aprons with. So you can put this on aprons, you can put this on any type of thing, any creation that you make. These are tags that I've made from a white silk ribbon. And I would just cut those off, fold the ends under, and then apply it. Or you could stitch around the edges like I did in the other one. So obviously you're going to want to back stitch at the beginning and at the end so it doesn't come undone. And just bring it down to the other end. Another way you can apply a tag, this is a size tag to a t-shirt. I could have just included this in the seam, but that would have added a lot more bulk. So I'm going to just tuck that underneath. When I top stitch this top ribbing right here, it will secure that tag in place right there. So that works pretty well for size tags. There you have it, several different ways that you can label your creations, and I hope that inspires you to get out your sewing machine, make something simple and fun. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, make sure you do that. Click on the bell in your notifications so that you can be notified when I put new things up. Have a wonderful day, have fun sewing, and we'll see you next time.